Have you ever been in this situation? You're sitting there, listening to someone tell a story. Everything sounds perfectly normal, but somewhere in your mind, a small alarm keeps ringing. Something isn't right. You suspect that the person might be lying, but the problem is, you don't have any proof. You can't exactly pull out a lie detector in the middle of a conversation, and not everyone has the time to study psychology just to read other people's minds. But the good news is, you don't need to do anything complicated. By simply paying attention to a few very small signs, you can start noticing when someone is trying to hide the truth. In this video, we're going to explore some simple ways that can help you detect a lie in just a few seconds. It may sound hard to believe, but sometimes the fastest thing to betray a lie is the body. Let's start with the eyes. People can control their words very well, but their eyes are not nearly as good at hiding things. Normally, a person blinks about 15 to 20 times per minute. But when someone is lying, the body often enters a state of tension, and that causes the eyes to react in two very specific ways. First, they blink rapidly, much more often than usual. Second, the opposite happens. They barely blink at all, and their gaze becomes stiff and frozen, almost as if it's paused. The reason is very simple. When someone lies, the brain needs extra time to write the script, and sometimes the body unintentionally stays still so the brain has time to come up with the next part of the story. So the next time you ask someone an important question, pay attention to the few seconds after they answer. If their eyes suddenly behave differently, that could be a signal worth noticing. But the eyes are not the most interesting part. There is a phenomenon in psychology called micro-expressions. These are extremely quick facial expressions that last less than half a second. They appear before the brain has time to put a mask over the real emotion. For example, someone might say they are not nervous at all, but for a very brief moment, you notice a slight frown or a flicker of confusion in their eyes. That is the moment when the real emotion briefly appears and then immediately gets hidden again. A simple way to detect this is to repeat part of their story. For example, you might say, "Oh, so you lost your wallet while you were sleeping in class, right?" At that exact moment, watch their face carefully. If you notice a flash of worry, a brief hesitation, or an expression that doesn't match their words, you may have just seen the truth slip out for a moment. Another interesting trick is this. Let the person tell the story one more time, but this time deliberately change a small detail. For example, they said the event happened at 4 p.m. After a few minutes, you casually ask again, "Oh, that happened around 3 p.m., right?" If the person is telling the truth, they will correct you immediately. "No, it was 4. But if they are lying, there's a chance they will hesitate or even agree with the incorrect detail. Because when someone invents a story, the brain has to remember the entire script it created, and sometimes even the liar forgets what they said earlier. There is another technique that is even more challenging. Ask the person to tell the story again, but this time from the end back to the beginning. It may sound a little cruel, but this is actually a method used in real investigations. The reason is very simple. If something truly happened, it exists in the brain as a memory. You can recall it in different ways. But if the story is only a product of imagination, it is usually built in a straight line, from beginning to end. When you reverse that order, the script starts to fall apart. The liar will become slower, more confused, or even begin to contradict themselves. In addition, the way a person chooses their words can reveal a lot. Innocent people usually answer in a simple and direct way, but people who are lying often start with phrases that sound unnecessarily dramatic. For example, "to be honest," "honestly," "truthfully." It sounds convincing, but sometimes it is actually a sign that they are trying too hard to make their words sound believable. They may also talk for a long time, add unnecessary details, or repeat your question to buy time. And finally, don't forget to watch the body. When people feel tense, the body often reacts before words can hide the truth. Someone who is lying might scratch their head, touch their face, lick their lips, adjust their hair, or move their hands in unusual ways. Some people even avoid eye contact completely, while others stare too intensely, as if they are trying to prove their innocence. These small gestures usually happen unconsciously, and because of that, they are much harder to control than words. Of course, none of these signs are absolute proof. Someone might avoid eye contact simply because they feel nervous. Another person might speak at length simply because they enjoy telling stories. But when several of these signals appear together, they can give you a much clearer picture of what might be really happening. Because in the end, people can lie with their words, but the body rarely lies for long.